Hey, hey, welcome Harshit, and welcome everyone who's joined us on this live stream. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you had a good day yesterday with the sessions, and hopefully, this time that we spend together today will add some more value. So, I have with me Harshit, of course, who's the VP and GM Supply Growth at Meesho. Uh, Before this, I know Harshit that you've held a wide variety of roles at Meesho. So, you've been the VP for fulfillment and experience. You've been the VP for product. So you clearly have a lot of experience building teams and scaling businesses. So hopefully we'll have a good chat around that. And but before I know you have a deck to share with us, and that will go with your talks. Before we get to that, let me just introduce myself as well. I am Kunal. I head the messaging team at Truecaller. I've been here for the best part of a year now, and overall, I have over, I would say, 19 years of experience in the industry and spent about 12 years on those building teams. So hopefully, I can contribute something to this discussion as well. Uh, yeah, but let's start with you, Harshit. Let's and start with your deck, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure, Kunal. Thanks for having me here, and thanks for everyone who has joined today. Cool. Let me just quickly share the deck, and that will help us structure the discussion very well. Great. Hope everybody can see this. So great, guys. So I'll be talking about scaling 1 to 10. Today's deck is mostly about my learnings uh, over the last 3 years that I've spent at Meesho, and I'll try to share few learnings which will help you probably build better businesses and better product, right? Quickly about me, while Kunal has introduced. So as Kunal said, I've been part of Meesho leadership team for last 3 years. As a result, led multiple orgs, led product operations, and now leading supply growth. Before this, I've spent time at housing.com, also did my own startup in SME financing space, and I graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 2012. For those of you who don't know about Meesho, we are a social commerce unicorn. We started this business in 2017, and now we are the third largest e-commerce platform. We are backed by some of the marquee investors like Facebook, Sequoia, Naspers, Shunway, YC, and Elevation, right? Um, so before I jump into the learnings, bit about what kind of growth we have seen. So we have grown almost 20x in team size. When I joined in 2017, we were 40-member team, the image that you see on the left-hand side. And today we are about 800 employees. Um, we have seen a very significant growth in terms of monthly active users as well. We have grown almost 200x, and we have seen even more growth in terms of number of transactions, right? So it's kind of a elusive J curve that you read about. So Meesho is on that path, and I hope the curve will become more steeper and steeper. Now, why is today's topic relevant, right? Why should we talk about scaling aggressively? Why can't we set up the right teams, right processes, and then press the pedal on scale, right? And hence, it would be the most efficient way of scaling up. The hard truth is that competition is everywhere, and being number one is sort of a strategic advantage, especially in markets which are winner take all, right? Being number one player attracts the best talent, best capital, and best partners. As a result, if you are number one, you have strong tailwinds attached. Now, when to scale aggressively? Broadly, per my understanding, company goes through three major stages. One is the first stage is finding the PMF. This is a stage wherein the core focus should be on finding the right product for the right market. Um, Pressing the pedal on scale, adding more resources, raising capital, adding more employees is not really a great idea. It's more of a distraction from the core job, that is finding the right product. And that you can probably do with 5 6 employees as well, or a small team, so as to say. The next stage is when you figured out the right product, right? And that's the time wherein you have something which is working for a market. You know that it can become big, and the idea then should be to win the market, right? You need to do everything in parallel that's possible to grow from a niche audience to a mainstream audience, right? The third stage is going from good to great. That's the stage when you start hitting the top right hand curve of the graph. Putting more money doesn't give similar ROI in terms of growth, right? And that's the point when you should start thinking. The companies usually start thinking about how to figure out the next S curve, right? How to figure out new products, new markets, wherein you can again ride an S curve, right? So middle stage is the one wherein you have to scale aggressively. What's required to scale aggressively? So broadly, I think there are three major things. One is Number one is product market fit. You need to have the right product for right market. Number two is a good model channel fit. So if you have built out a product, it's not just good enough to build a product, but it's also very important to find a scalable channel to distribute your products, right? And with that comes the need to correctly monetize your product as well, right? It should be a sustainable venture. Otherwise, you will probably see a good growth, but you will flatten out because you don't have funds to support that growth. The third most important thing is building the right team and culture. As I said, you can figure out product market fit with a small team, but winning the market takes team. And I'll jump into each of these topics in details in the coming slides. So, product market fit, right? So, many of us think that product market fit is that point wherein if you reach at that point, everything is great. Yes, things do become great because you have started hitting a point wherein now the journey is much smoother than the previous phase, but the job is not done. It's not zero and one, and products go from weak PMF to a strong PMF, right? Which is where it's very important to continuously refine your product. Now, this is an example of how we think about product market fit at Meesho, or rather refining PMF at Meesho. For us, it's more of a flywheel. For our users, the key value prop that Meesho adds is income plus identity. And income plus identity for our users come from doing more sales on the platform. And more sales is again a function of how good the experience is in terms of quality, pricing, selection, and delivery quality, right? The better these experience variables are, the more consumer sales our users have, and more consumer sales as a platform that we have feeds into again this flywheel wherein we are able to attract more and more suppliers, and more suppliers means that we are again able to improve each of these experience levers because of increased competition, right? Now this is a flywheel which we have figured over last 3 years, right? So it took us time to make sense of it. uh, and now it's a very very powerful tool for us to figure out what to prioritize, what to build every month, every quarter. So key takeaway for you guys is, how do you also establish a sort of equation for your product, your business line? You should be able to clearly identify what are the key input metrics which will lead to an outcome, right? And what is the sensitivity of each of these input metrics? Once you build that clarity, prioritizing the right products, right feature becomes much, much easier. Now, going a bit practical in terms of uh, what kind of product we are building. So, how we build the products, right? Broadly, we follow these 5 steps. There are we are focused on speaking to customers. Customers are the real CEOs. So uh, it's not the product manager who defines what the feature should be or what the roadmap should be. It is the customer who defines that this is my problem and this is how you should be solving it, right? And this is a very important value for all of us. We are very focused on listening to our customers, and it has helped us a lot of times, right? So let me talk about an instance. So when I joined early on, I was supposed to look after growth, but the time I joined, our order numbers start dipping, right? And Vidit, who is the CEO, was like, "What the hell, man? I made you join for increasing numbers, order numbers, and things are going southwards." And at that time, we had instrumentation in place, but the understanding of how those input metrics behave with our output metrics, that is orders, was not very clear. So I was left with the only option of calling customers. And thank God I got that opportunity. I spoke to few customers, and within a few calls, it was pretty clear that quality was something which was going off on the platform. Um, we understood that we hadn't built good guardrails to manage quality of products on the platform, and that's when we started investing on that side. We figured out how to ramp up suppliers, how to churn out suppliers who were not giving good quality products, and we started building rating and reviews as a feature on the platform. Um, and things started to improve, right? So staying close is very, very important. And rather, like at Meesho, we are in touch with our customers on WhatsApp, so we speak to them every week. The next most important part is like listening to problems and not solutions. Many a times we just try to fulfill what customers are asking for, right? But that's not the ideal way. You should listen to the problems, not the solutions, because if customers knew what the solution is, they would have been the product manager, not you, right? Again, a good example at Meesho has been a continuous ask for reseller website as a tool. Uh, Many a times our user have asked that why don't you build a third party website for us, right? And we'll be able to list all our products, and our consumers will be able to visit that particular website, and our orders will increase. uh, that's a trap, and that is something which we learned the hard way before pivoting to this business. The fact is that user is not asking for website. Their key problem is how do we increase orders, and till the time that's not happening, your website as a product will see initial traction, but retention will fall off the cliff, right? And that's where building this website or storefront for users, as our users have been asking for last 3 years, is not the right idea. So again, listen to problems, not solution. You have to figure out the right solution. That's your job. The third most important thing is build thesis, apply logic, be very brutal in terms of whether it makes sense to you or not, right? Do primary research, do secondary research, see what other players are doing in the market, and then figure out, try to build a thesis around solution, right? Now, the fourth step is move fast, iterate, right? Don't just fall into the trap of analysis paralysis. Try building things out, because maximum learning happens when you actually ship out a product and you see a user using your product, right? Um, Again, like one example from Meesho that I can think of is referrals. Early on, we decided that we would want to build referral as a channel of acquisition, and there were serious concerns against it, right? Uh, Many of anti-arguments against referral were like, why would a user refer another user who will probably cannibalize their own consumer network, right? Because somebody you would refer will be part of your network, and your consumer networks would be overlapping. Why would you do such a thing? Why would you refer someone else on the same platform and kill your orders? The pro argument was that not everyone is able to become an entrepreneur on the platform, and there would be certain segment of users who would be good at convincing others but not good at doing reselling on a day-to-day basis, right? um, I could have done all the surveys. I did all the surveys, and in most of the surveys I found that yes, people don't want to refer other users because of the same reason that we could think of. But when I launched an MVP, that's when I realized no, there is a segment which is actually, when given an offer, that segment is actually willing to refer someone, right? And that's the power of shipping out things. It's only when you ship and when you give a tangible product or a prototype to your users, that's when you realize and understand what's the real truth is, right? So never shy away from shipping fast. It's one of the core values right after listening to customers. Speed over perfection is our core value, and we like judge every candidate on that, right? And it has done wonders for us. The last step is rinse and repeat. Nobody gets the right product in the first loop. You have to continuously iterate on your product. um, it doesn't take like 50 or 100 loops. It will take few loops, but it will not be one loop, right? So don't shoot for it. Try to iterate upon it, and hopefully you will build much faster in a much more efficient manner. The last thing before I move to the next slide is that just shipping fast recklessly is also not the answer. You have to be very thoughtful about what you ship, right? Otherwise you'll fall into the trap of having speed but not velocity, right? So be thoughtful, but don't shy away from bias for action. Great. The next major section is model channel fit. So if you have built a product or a feature, you also need to figure out how to distribute and monetize that particular product, right? And this is a great article by Brian Balfour, who says that to build $100 million companies, you need a good fit between all these variables: market, product, channel, and model. And you should read out this article. Um, but if you think deeply about it, and you will realize that every product falls at different point in spectrum according to this framework. If you think about social media companies, now they can't really acquire their users through paid acquisition because um, they monetize through ads, and the value that they generate by adding new user through ads is not equal to the spend that they will incur through paid acquisition, right? Which is why most social companies grow through virality. They might build a seed base by spending through paid acquisition, but if they have to grow big, virality is the key channel for them, right? Similarly, enterprise companies have to do distribution in person, right? The products are complex and sales cycles are long, and it takes a person to physically visit the client to sell a product. And you can't cover up the cost of that sales channel through a freemium product or a free product, right? Or which is where you have to basically charge for each sales, and that's how channel model fit works in real life. Now, thinking in terms of Meesho's context, channel fit was very, very important. There is a reason Meesho grew post 2016-17. Before that, Meesho as a concept would have existed, but wouldn't have grown as much, right? And that coincides with WhatsApp, Facebook, and smartphone penetration in the country, right? So if you see how WhatsApp grew during this period because of Geo and multiple other things, um, it correlates with our growth as well. Without WhatsApp, our users would not have been able to acquire um, the end customers. Earlier, they had to hold kitty parties, etc., and were limited by a geography. Now, with WhatsApp, they can reach out to anyone at any point of time in the day, right? Similarly, for us, acquiring homemakers, which is our core TG, was very, very hard without mobile data penetration, right? Uh, many of homemaker, like many of us, didn't have a smartphone before 2013-14, right? And homemakers started to get smartphone and mobile data during this time period exactly, right? And that's where um, for us also acquiring our core TG became much more scalable and cost effective during the same timeline, right? So key takeaway for all of you is that when building a product or a feature, in fact, you should not only think about product but also think deeply about how would you distribute your feature or product scalably. Great. Now moving on to the last part, which is the most interesting part for me, has been building amazing team and culture. And I really like this quote by Michael Jordan, which says, "Talent wins game, but teamwork and intelligence win championships." Right? Essentially, it says that as an individual, you can build product, but you cannot win a market. Right? And that's a very, very powerful quote from someone who is based in the industry. Right? So from that perspective, building a team, which is really great, is a strategic leverage for you guys, right? Who are again thinking to build new products, new businesses. Um, and I think of building a product as building a team as hire new employees, how do you basically engage those new employees, and how do you ramp those employees up, right? And just hold on, yeah. And and that's how you should be thinking about it, right? So coming to ground, how do we hire? So when hiring, we follow these four major principles. We try to look for the best. Good enough doesn't work. Good enough doesn't work because when you are a new company or a company which has just figured out product market fit, there is a lot of ambiguity, and good enough folks are not able to shift from one problem statement to other problem statement, which will happen very very often when you are building a new team or a new product, right? So you have to look for best. Now, one practical piece of advice here is that everybody says hire the best, but the definition of best is in itself very subjective, right? Which is where I follow a rule of going after top quartile of folks that I've spoken to. And I try to manage between top quartile and top 10%, depending on where I am in terms of team building. And I try to have a good balance between those two segments, right, when building a team. Uh,
Hey Harshit, sorry to interrupt you, but I think we can't see your slides anymore. So we might have to share your screen
oh,
again.
okay, just hold on. Is it visible now?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome, great. So this is a slide wherein I was talking about the four major things that we focus on, and the first one being looking for the best. Not good enough doesn't work. The second most important thing is asking for referrals, because a referral is a very very good channel when starting out to build a team. Uh, the great part with referral is that the quality of folks that will come in will be really great, and their chances of succeeding within your company or team are very very high because they are implicitly filtered, right? If you ask a good guy who are the other good guys in their own network, they know what good is, right? Specifically when it comes to domain expertise, and as a result you will only interview folks who are really good, right? So referral as a channel has worked wonders for us, and I would recommend that you don't shy away from reaching out to your network and asking for referrals, especially the folks whom you admire. Um, the second part is that, like, if someone good has joined your team, make sure you ask him for referrals again. The third major step is having a well-defined process. You should know what you're looking forward to, and you should have a clear process in place of how to filter for those requirements, right? So, for example, at Meesho, we have a very well defined process of 3 to 4 interviews plus assignment. Assignment is something which is rare in startup ecosystem because it's a huge friction when hiring someone. But for us, it has been really, really good because we are able to filter out intent well. We only interview folks who are really interested in joining our rocket ship, right? Um, and in those 3 to 4 rounds also we have a very clear set of understanding, like we have a very clear understanding of what questions to ask. So for example, I only ask 3 questions in all my interviews, whatever the role may be, or whenever I'm hiring. And those 3 questions are what has been your accomplished in the past, what is a major failure and what did you learn from that, and third is a case which I use to judge problem solving, right? And I ask the same question to everyone. The beauty is that because I ask the same question, I get varied set of responses, and I'm able to benchmark all those responses against each other, and I'm able to judge with much better lens that who is where, right? Um, and that has really helped over time. The fourth part is ref check is everything. So you can only judge so much in an interview process, and as a result, there will be tons of things which you will not be able to judge, right? Particularly around execution, and which is where we don't hire anyone without a ref check. So make sure you do ref check, and that has helped us avoid blunders in the past. Now we have hired a team. The next major part is scaling up that team and aligning that team to overall mission of the company, which is where there are tons of tools around OKRs, one-on-ones, culture. Culture is, I think, the most important thing because as you grow big from a small team to, let's say, a team of 500, your number of connections as a manager or a CEO starts to like multiply and rise exponentially, right? So you won't be able to interact with each and every employee every time, which is where you need to give your employees or your team members a set of guidelines that they can follow when you are not there, right? So as a manager, you can't take every decision. You need to empower your team with a set of guidelines that they can follow when you are not there, and it's a great leverage. Um a team which is very well aligned, which knows how to prioritize, what to prioritize, and what values to go after when solving for customers, is a very very powerful team, right? It gives you great leverage at scale, right? So thinking about what kind of culture you want to build is again a very important thing, and it's relatively simpler. Like synthesizing all the jargon that you might read in books, it's about two major things. A, you need to articulate the principles well, which will help your business grow. For example, for us, listening to customers and speed is very, very important. So we have clearly articulated that making entrepreneurs successful and speed over perfection are some of the top values that everyone has to display, right? And the second part, once you've articulated it well, is around putting them into action. As a leader, as a manager, everyone is looking up to you, right? You might send a lot of mails or do a lot of fun activities or try to make it a bit more jazzy that, hey, we have a great culture by having great photo shoots. That will not teach your team what to do in such scenarios, right? They will basically imbibe what you are doing, right? So portray those values in action, and that's how your team will also start following that culture. Great. So I am at the end of my presentation. The last two slides are the resources, books, and blogs that have helped Meesho team at different stages of the company. We have learned, like most of our knowledge is borrowed, which we got a chance to apply in real life. And I hope these resources will be equally helpful to you to build better product and better businesses. And I'll share this with this deck with Truecaller team, and maybe you can coordinate. And we'll probably post on public handles so that you can access the same resources. Great. That's all from my side.
Hey, thanks, Harshit. It was really insightful, and I hope everyone who's tuned in or anyone who's watching this later on video, finds that helpful.
Mhm.
So I think one of the key things that emerged from your from a little session there, if I can say that, is about hiring people, right? Like hiring, like our theme here is building teams and solving hard problems. I would say that building a team is the hardest problem. Like
Hmm.
at least that is that's my experience at least. So, and one of the from my experience, one of the biggest challenges tends to be, especially when you're starting off managing a team, is knowing when to let go, right?
Mhm.
Like when you're starting off, you have a small team, and maybe it's you promoted somebody who was to do a job that you used to do earlier. So I
Mhm.
think letting go of small decisions, maybe maybe, and I would say even especially when you know that you could have done that job better. For example, if that was something that you were doing till yesterday and today somebody who's been promoted, they'll obviously not be doing that job as good as
Mhm.
you were doing that. So during those initial days, it's really important to let go of certain things, even when like I was saying, even when you know that you could have probably done that job better. So I think a strategy that has really helped me in that regard, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well, is that is it's again really simple, that you hire really smart people and then just let them go.
Right.
And so do you have like a strategy like that, or what helps you take some of those hiring decisions?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think building a team is the major part of my job description, right? If I'm not able to build, or in fact, that's true for every manager. If you're not able to build a great team, you will never succeed at meeting steep targets or achieving something which is very bold, right? Um, and this is a standard trap that everyone who is a first time manager falls into, because you have been IC for a long time and you know that you're really good at your job. When you see that it's not happening by other folks, you tend to take things in your control, right? And that's when you lose your leverage. That's when you start having a high opportunity cost. You spend time in something which you should not be doing as a manager or as a leader, and something else will suffer, right? Either you will probably meet your targets in project one, but you'll not be able to deliver on project two and project three, right? And as a manager, it's a failure. You have to meet targets and you have to deliver all three projects, and that's where the concept of leverage comes. If you hire good folks, right? If you hire right folks in right positions, that's half the job, and you'll be able to deliver on all three projects in the most simplest manner, right? And I've also seen that it's very much correlated with managers' happiness. If you are able to hire well, you will be happy.
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that caught my eye when you were speaking is when you were talking about hiring the best people, right? You mentioned that in your experience, or at least when you've been working with companies, they often need to, like, companies have pivoted and they had to switch to a different problem statement. So I personally don't have an experience with a startup which has pivoted that significantly. But in such situations, how do you get the team on board? Because they signed up for a specific mission, they signed up for a specific problem statement. But I know it's like relatively common in the startup world to pivot. But still, as a manager, suddenly, okay, till today we're working on this. From tomorrow, or now we're going to be. How do you essentially get everybody on board and keep them motivated?
Got it. Yeah, so I think I haven't seen major pivots myself as well, but I have seen a lot of changes in direction while solving problems at Meesho. And therein, few things which have really helped us is a being very very transparent to everyone, right? Being transparent in terms of what the problem statement was, why there was a need to change direction, and why do we think the new direction is helpful, right? So as a leader, as a manager, you yourself should have a strong conviction and understanding of why those changes are happening, and then you should be able to transparently communicate all those changes, your thought process, being very very honest with your team, right? Just stay honest, stay transparent with them and explain them clearly why all of that those changes are happening. um, Folks joining, like at times new managers feel that telling giving too much information to their devotees is going to do more harm, but that's not the case. Folks who are joining startups understand that there is fair bit of risk involved, right? And things won't be as smooth as um doing like it will not be a clear ship. So
Right.
giving them transparency, giving them great rationale of why something is changing is the simplest way of tackling this problem.
And yeah, I was checking out the Meesho app earlier this week, and I encourage all of you to do that because it's like a really good app. Especially, it's really easy to get started. Especially, there's this one tap Truecaller login. I think that Harshad had mentioned earlier as well. So when you're signing up, it's really simple to log in. So, and you during your presentation as well, you mentioned you use WhatsApp as a platform as well.
Right.
So now there are these, things like the Truecaller SDK, WhatsApp. There are a bunch of other third-party. There's a huge third-party ecosystem for that developers can leverage, especially startups. So, like, did that has that played an important part in your journey? Using those third-party tools and knowledge, and would you recommend that is something people should explore?
Yeah, so I think it's very, very important. It's a traditional build versus buy decision that every product manager or business manager will come across, right? And uh, in lieu of speed, you can't build everything, right? Over time, what has happened is like things have become very, very modularized. Earlier, there was no AWS, now there is AWS. There are a bunch of APIs now to send SMS. There is Truecaller, which is, of course, a great product. to make an easy login process, right? And similarly, there are tons of other modules that exist today which are ready to use almost, right? They have very easy to use APIs, and you can integrate with them quickly within a matter of days, and can get up and running, right? So taking this build versus buy decision right, understanding what's core to your business, what is your unique solution that you're offering, having a clear understanding of that domain and understanding what is peripheral is really important to take that decision. So, in nutshell, the core is something which you should focus on as a team. Everything peripheral, right from CRMs to analytical solutions to uh, using SMS, login APIs, all of that is peripheral, right? If you build it in house, it's not going to change any outcome for you. So whether it's much better to use that dev bandwidth in building your core value proposition and not building peripherals, and hence optimize for speed. That way you learn faster and you will have higher probability of succeeding in whatever you are attempting.
Right, I couldn't agree more. So we have, let's look at the questions from the participants. We have Akhilesh who asked, what is more important while hiring at scaling stage, attitude or aptitude? I'll give my take briefly on this before passing it over to you, so you have time to think about it. Yeah, if you ask me, like if you'd asked me the same question about, I'll have to go a long time back. I think about 12 years ago or like 10, 12 years ago, when I myself, I mean, it would be probably hard for you guys watching to believe this, but I used to be, again, long back, I used to be the rockstar developer of some team. And if you'd asked me then, I would, of course, would have said, of course, it's talent, and aptitude. It's everything, If you hire smart developers and you give them everything that they want, that's all you need. But when I learned to, when I started to manage teams, my attitude changed very quickly because I realized that it's not just about aptitude as well, right? I would now, if you ask me, I would say that attitude is probably more important than aptitude, because give me a smart, I mean, of course, smart people with great attitude is like the perfect combination. That's the best people that you were talking about.
Correct.
But I think if I would rather work with somebody who has a great attitude and is like 80% there, rather than somebody who has 100% of the skills but a shitty attitude. Pardon my French. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree to your thought process. For me, like it is both, right? The hard reality is that both are important to succeed. And the good news is that there are folks out there and there are enough folks out there who are smart and who have the right attitude, especially in Indian ecosystem. So why compromise on either of these attributes, right? Personally, I have seen folks who are very smart, but they were not motivated enough, right? And hence they could not get the job done. And I've seen folks who were very motivated, but because they were not as smart, they could not scale with the company. So there are both fractions, and as a result, both of them are important in our interview process. We make sure that there is a good cult fit, and we have a bunch of problem solving discussions so that we are also filtering candidates for great aptitude.
Right. And I think probably since you worked in a wide variety of roles as well, right? Even within Meesho and even before that, could you talk about how and if actually the hiring process or the team building process differs for you across various functions? Like for example, in your current role with supply growth, is the team building process different than when you were, let's say, doing product?
Hmm. Right. So surprisingly, I think it's it's more common than not, and especially within all the business roles. Tech follows a slightly different hiring, but many roles on the business side have almost the same process, right? And there are certain common principles that I think apply to all sort of hirings and all functions, which is, as I mentioned earlier, have a clear understanding of whom you're trying to hire, have a well-defined process to hire those folks, and then you need to understand what kind of person you're hiring, right? Do you need a generalist in that role, or do you need a specialist in that role? Usually, this is correlated with a the function, how complex that function is. So you can't put a best guy into engineering roles. And it is also correlated to the scale of the company, right? The smaller the company is, there is a lot of ambiguity that's there, and there are a lot of low hanging fruits also, right? Which is where a generalist does a much better job. You can get a generalist who is really smart and he can tackle all sort of problems. He can move from one problem statement to the other problem statement, right? But as the complexity grows, as the company grows, the opportunities start become like the problem statements start becoming more difficult and difficult, and that's where specialists become much more important, right? So depending on what stage of the problem statement and company you are, you need to figure out whether to hire a generalist or a specialist. And then once you have that clarity, define that well, have a well-defined process, do ref checks, and 80% of the job would be done. At least that's been my experience so far.
Right. So I think we're running out of time, but we'll quickly take one or two more questions. Sumant, who's a student, he asks, how should a fresher approach towards product roles? Since you have no experience, how do you prove that you're good enough for the job? If you could answer that quickly.
So sorry. So the question is like, how can you, as a fresher, become
As
in product role?
prove yourself for a product role, because usually, most product roles would probably ask for some experience. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think all of us who have become PMs have gone through that phase. Like nobody was born a PM, and all of us had a common story around showing some bit of hustle. Right, there would be some some job out there may not be what you are expecting or are looking out for exactly, but there might be a product analyst job or an analyst job or a PM job in a small company wherein you can get opportunity. So use that opportunity, go after it, learn on the job, read as much as possible, and slowly you'll start coming up the curve, right? And once you start investing for the long term in the PM role, it might seem a steep challenge upfront, but probably in a year or so you will be in a good shape.
Thanks a ton. And we have like last questions. Maybe you can take 30 seconds to answer this one.
Mm.
Uh, Charmi Kapoor asks, what is the one major red flag that definitely makes you reject a candidate in a PM role? I don't know if there's like, you can think about it I'll like quickly give my take. I don't know if there's like one thing as such, but overall, I would say like the culture fit would be the biggest thing. But would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, for me again, like I try to optimize for both culture fit and product, like problem solving attitude. Um, Usually, product managers are expected to handle host of things, right? They are the central pillar in terms of coordinating cross-functional efforts, and it requires both hustle as well as smarts to manage good products and good teams. So I usually look for both the things. If one of them is missing, I usually reject the person.
Great. Thank you so much, Harshit. Thanks for your time, and thanks everybody for tuning in today. I hope you found this useful. And if you joined in late, you'll be able to access recording of this session on Truecaller's YouTube channel later. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.